Hi, my name is Tesslyn Sutton, and I am doing the women's movement. I did part 3 in a group of 2 people, so my part is to talk about why the topic matters. This topic matters because the women's movement is one of the main reasons women have the ability to vote, elect office, own businesses, get equal pay, etc. In the 1800s, white women were seen as below white men, but above black slaves. And if you were a female minority slave, your problems were much greater. They were seen as the property of men that controlled them, whether they were being controlled by their father or their husband or brother. The women's movement gave women in the world a voice and the courage to demand the civil rights they deserved. The women's suffrage movement was one of the most impactful events in the history of women. Women's suffrage fought greatly for women to be seen as equal to men, both politically and civilly. Next, I'll talk about to whom and what does it matter. The women's movement matters to everyone in the world. It's not just because of women. This matters to men, children, whites, Latinos, and all political and financial institutions. Women hold a great power over the men that claim to run certain countries. Whether it be politically, socially, a woman has the power to destroy a man's legacy as well as his future. A prime example would be Rosa Parks, a woman who disrupted the political agenda of thousands. She not only disrupted the agenda, she actually inspired other women to take a stand for the simple things of life that they were deserving of. The next part is how is the women's movement relevant to global citizenship? The women's movement is relevant to global citizenship because women were denied so many civil rights that being a part of something larger than what one's country was offering was the best option. Global citizenship focuses on the way we identify with the world as one, while not identifying and separating ourselves from one another by our country's identity. The women's movement is in direct correlation to global citizenship because women were not accepted as one with the world because they were denied so many simple civil rights. How can we all be one when a group of us are subjected to inequality and oppression? The next part discusses what the women's movement tells us about ourselves and what does it tell us about the world. The women's movement tells us that we are far behind in the race of equality actually. If we cannot treat the women of this world the same as any other person, how are we operating under a global citizenship nation? The women's movement tells us that we need to remain focused on providing everyone with the same equal treatment. This tells us that the world has lost focus on equality for all because everyone is so focused on money and everything else that's not important. But what good is money if the people of the world are suffering? Will money buy their happiness, their rights, their peace? The next part discusses what are the implications of this issue for global citizenship. The women's movement poses a real issue for global citizenship because global citizenship is based on accepting an identity with the world and not just your country. If women cannot find their identity within their country or the world, where does that leave them? The women's movement has shown us that global citizenship cannot work unless all parties involved are equal in all areas. The Constitution states that we are all created equal, yet we are treated so differently. And the next part discusses who is responsible for lacking women's rights. Who is responsible? The people responsible for oppressing women is the men who claim to run the prospective countries. The men in power who create the rules they expect everyone to blindly follow. An example of these type of people would be the policymakers, lawmakers, super PACs, and any influential political or wealthy leaders. And lastly, we're going to discuss who is impacted and how are they impacted. The women of the world are greatly impacted by the women's movement, both positively and negatively. Women have gained a voice, have learned not to give up, to fight for what they deserve, and to work hard enough so that no one can take their success away from them. Women are also impacted negatively by the women's movement because they are still discriminated against, treated unequally by employers, sexually assaulted and harassed, discriminated against, as I stated before, and treated as though they are not worth more than common property. These negative impacts have been very detrimental to women in history. However, with women taking a greater stand, they will not be seen as property any longer. Thank you.